6 hours. That's all it took for an entire police department to unravel. One bad arrest, one man dragged across a parking lot while holding his own federal badge, and by sunrise, 17 officers would lose their careers and the city would be staring at a lawsuit worth more than $10 million. Yeah, that actually happened. And the wildest part is the whole thing started with two cops who thought they were the smartest guys in the parking lot. Now, before we get into the explosion part of the story, you have to understand the man at the center of it. Special Agent Darius Cole wasn't some rookie who wandered into the wrong situation. The guy had spent over a decade working undercover cases across the Southeast, the kind of operations where one mistake could get you buried in a shallow grave behind a warehouse somewhere. He'd gone through Howard University, trained at Quantico, climbed his way through federal investigations that most people never even hear about. Drug pipelines, trafficking rings, organized distribution networks. By the time this story begins, Darius had already built a reputation inside the Bureau as the kind of agent you trust with the messy assignments, the ones that require patience, nerve, and the ability to keep your cool when everything around you goes sideways. That night was supposed to be simple. Quiet surveillance, the kind that feels boring until you realize it's the last piece of a year-long investigation. The FBI had been building a case called Operation Ironclad for 14 months. The target was a distribution network operating across several counties, moving narcotics through small businesses that looked completely legitimate on the surface. Laundromats, storage facilities, trucking depots, places nobody looks twice at. Darius had spent the last 3 months undercover, slowly gaining the trust of a man running the middle of the operation. If everything went right, they would finally confirm the location of a secondary warehouse that night. And 2 days later, the entire network would collapse. So, around 11:45 p.m., Darius was sitting alone in a rented Chevy Silverado behind an old auto parts warehouse outside a quiet Georgia town called Harrow County. No marked vehicles, no backup visible, just a truck parked in a gravel lot while he watched the loading dock across the street. Standard surveillance protocol. He had a granola bar on the seat beside him, his phone dimmed, his operation file sitting on the passenger seat with the red FBI stamp across the top. Then a police cruiser rolled slowly into the lot. Darius noticed it immediately, but didn't move. Patrol officers cruise through industrial areas all the time, especially late at night. Usually they take one look, shine a flashlight around, and move on, but this cruiser didn't keep driving. It slowed, stopped, and then backed up. Then the spotlight hit the truck. Now, if you've never had a police spotlight hit your windshield at midnight, let me tell you something. It's like someone just turned on the sun right in your face. You can't see anything outside the vehicle, just a wall of white light. Darius took a slow breath, put both hands on the steering wheel where they were clearly visible, and waited. He'd been through situations like this before. You stay calm, you identify yourself, you de-escalate. Simple. The driver's door of the cruiser opened and Officer Ryan Kowalski stepped out. Young guy, late 20s, the kind of posture that says he's absolutely certain he's in charge of whatever situation he just walked into. His partner, Officer Tess, moved behind the truck, positioning himself near the rear bumper. Kowalski walked straight up to the window and tapped the glass hard. Roll the window down. Step out of the vehicle. Darius rolled the window halfway down but didn't step out. His voice stayed steady. Officer, before we go any further, I need to inform you I'm a federal law enforcement agent working an active surveillance operation. I'm going to reach into my jacket and show you my credentials. That should have been the end of it. A normal officer hears that, pauses, calls it in, maybe checks with a supervisor. But Kowalski didn't pause. I said step out of the vehicle, he snapped. Darius kept his hands visible. Sir, I'm Special Agent Darius Cole with the FBI. If you contact your supervisor, this can be cleared up very quickly. Kowalski glanced back at his partner and something passed between them. Not concern, not caution. Irritation. The kind of irritation a person gets when someone challenges their authority in front of another officer. Last warning, Kowalski said. Darius slowly reached toward his jacket. I'm reaching for my credentials. The officer's gun came out instantly. Hands where I can see them. Within seconds, the truck door was yanked open. Darius was pulled from the vehicle, and both officers forced him face down onto the gravel. His badge was visible, his credentials were literally in his hand. I'm a federal agent, Darius said again, trying to stay calm, even while they cuffed him. My supervising agent is Lisa Trenton. Her number's in my phone. Hands behind your back. What am I being charged with? No one answered that question. Instead, Officer Tess grabbed the file from the passenger seat. The red letters on the folder read, Operation Ironclad. A reasonable person might have paused at that point. Might have thought maybe we should slow down here. Kowalski didn't slow down. Could be fake, he said. Then he added 2 words that would later echo through a federal courtroom. Book him. Darius Cole, FBI special agent, was handcuffed, placed in the back of a patrol car, and taken to the Harrove County Police Station. Inside the station, things didn't get any better. His phone badge, credentials, and service weapon were placed in evidence bags. The arrest report listed the charges as suspicious activity, failure to comply, and trespassing, even though the parking lot was public access property. When Sergeant Pete Dunor, the shift supervisor that night, heard the arrest come over the radio, he asked 2 questions. Is he armed? Yes. Is he in custody? Yes. Then book him. No one checked the badge. No one called a supervisor. No one verified anything. At 12:21 a.m., Darius Cole was placed in a holding cell. And then something happened that the officers never considered. Because while Darius sat in that cell asking repeatedly for a phone call, Operation Ironclad was falling apart in real time. About 18 miles away, the drug handoff he had been waiting 3 months to witness took place without him. The suspect signed for the shipment, drove away, and the location of the cartel's main warehouse remained unknown. 14 months of investigation gone. Inside the cell, Darius stayed calm for the first hour, then the second, then the third. Each time an officer walked past the cell, he asked the same question. May I make a phone call? Each time the answer was the same. Someone will be with you shortly. Around 2:40 a.m., a young officer named Karen Bledsoe stopped at the cell during a routine welfare check. She was new, barely 3 months out of the academy. She looked at Darius sitting there, calm, composed, nothing like the other people in the holding cell. You need anything, she asked. Yes, Darius said. Call the FBI field office in Atlanta. Tell them Special Agent Darius Cole has been detained here and ask them to contact Deputy Director Frank Okafor immediately. Karen hesitated. I'll pass the message along. I need you to make the call yourself, Darius replied quietly. She went to Sergeant Dunor and repeated the message. Dunor shrugged. If he was really FBI, they'd already be looking for him. Karen walked away, but the doubt stayed with her. And about 2 hours later, it turned out that doubt was justified. Back in Atlanta, Special Agent Lisa Trenton arrived early for a briefing and noticed something strange. Darius had missed his scheduled check-in. That alone was unusual. When she tried to reach him, his phone went straight to voicemail. His undercover phone was off. The tracking beacon attached to his surveillance vehicle showed no signal. Darius Cole didn't miss check-ins, not once in 6 years. Lisa called Deputy Director Frank Okafor. By 5:45 a.m., 3 black SUVs were driving toward Harrove County. No sirens, no lights, just quiet purpose. They arrived at the station at 6:03 a.m. Frank Okafor walked through the front door with 8 federal agents behind him and asked one question. Where is Special Agent Darius Cole? The desk officer pointed toward the cell block. Minutes later, Darius was released from holding. Okafor looked at him for a moment. You all right? He asked. Darius shook his head. No, not even a little bit. Okafor nodded slowly. Is your operation salvageable? Darius thought about the shipment that had already left the warehouse hours earlier. Not in its current form. That was the moment everything changed. Because once the FBI started asking questions, the Harrove County Police Department started coming apart at the seams. Both arresting officers claimed their body cameras had malfunctioned during the arrest. Unfortunately for them, a nearby logistics company had installed high-definition security cameras facing the parking lot across the street. The footage showed everything. It showed Darius with his hands raised. It showed him calmly identifying himself as a federal agent. It showed Officer Kowalski staring directly at his credentials. And then it captured the words. Doesn't matter. Those 2 words became the center of the entire investigation. Because once federal investigators started reviewing personnel records, they discovered something bigger than one bad arrest. Over the previous 3 years, more than 30 complaints involving excessive force or unlawful detention had been filed against officers in Harrove County. Almost all of them involved Black or Latino residents. None of them resulted in discipline. The same supervisors had reviewed and dismissed nearly every complaint. Within weeks, the investigation uncovered additional problems. Missing evidence records, falsified overtime, unauthorized database searches. The arrest of Darius Cole hadn't created the corruption. It had exposed it. 17 officers eventually lost their badges. Kowalski was charged with civil rights violations and evidence tampering. Tess was charged with obstruction of justice. Sergeant Dunor faced corruption charges. The police chief was forced to resign. Then came the lawsuits. Darius hired a civil rights attorney named Charlotte Webb, who filed a federal case against Harrove County seeking $12 million in damages. Soon after, several local residents came forward with their own complaints of wrongful arrests. What started as one lawsuit turned into 14. By the time negotiations ended, the city agreed to pay over $10 million in settlements and implement sweeping reforms inside the police department. Mandatory retraining, body camera accountability systems, independent oversight of complaints. But for Darius, the victory felt complicated. Operation Ironclad had been compromised. The main suspect was eventually arrested, but on lesser charges. A case that should have dismantled an entire distribution network resulted in a much lighter sentence. That cost never appeared on the settlement check. Months later, the FBI offered Darius a safer job in Washington, a training role away from undercover work. He turned it down. "I'm going back to the field," he said, because the truth is he didn't want safety. He wanted accountability. Instead, he used a portion of his settlement money to create the Harrow Fund, a legal defense program helping low-income residents fight cases of police misconduct. Within 18 months, the fund had taken on 23 cases and recovered millions of dollars for people who had previously been ignored. And it all started with 6 hours in a holding cell. Now here's the question that still divides people when they hear this story. Some say those officers were just doing their jobs. Others say what happened to Darius Cole proves exactly how dangerous unchecked authority can be. So I want to hear from you. If you were in that parking lot that night, do you think those officers made an honest mistake, or do you think they saw exactly who Darius was and decided it didn't matter? Tell me what you think in the comments, because stories like this only change things when people talk about them. And if this story made you stop and think even for a second, share it with someone else.